welcome to another exciting and insightful episode of the Harvard Podcast. With me today, I am very excited to welcome Beate Chelette. She is a growth architect, founder of the Women's Code, a podcast host, best-selling author, keynote motivational speaker, and one of HuffPost's 50 must-follow entrepreneurs. I am honored to have you here today, Beate. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Carmel. I was looking forward to this.
As a start, tell us more about your history, how your journey unfolded, and what really sparked your mission to not only sell dreams, or it's not to sell dreams, but to provide the roadmap to grow authority and scale impact.
Yeah, so my story is I'm an immigrant. I come from Germany. I'm a first generation, so I came here by myself when I was 23 years old, and I had to figure out through a lot of hard work and making a lot of mistakes and trial and error how to make something out of myself. And the story in itself is littered with disasters and tragedies and death and lawsuits and fires, floods, riots, earthquake, just like a good Hollywood story would read. And at the end of all of this, I figured out how to crack the code and then sell my business in a multimillion-dollar exit to no other than Bill Gates. And then after the exit, I looked at what women in corporations go through because they made me an offer to come on to the organization as our senior director for entertainment globally. And I was shocked on how some of these old business code systems worked or really did not work, and certainly don't work for women, don't work for minorities, don't work for anybody with special abilities. And frankly, they don't work for men so well either. But that is the system, and everybody works in this. And afterward, I said, so there's two things I wanted to do. I wanted to found the Women's Code and help women to understand that we first have to have a code amongst ourselves and understand that there has to be a code of conduct on how women interact with each other, so that all this backstabbing and this horrific behavior that we see often in middle school can be eradicated. And number two, that the experience that I had on how to find these shortcuts to make businesses successful, that I get this information out as the growth architect to as many people as possible. And that's how I ended up being the growth architect and founder of the Women's Code.
Very interesting. So obviously, I think a lot of people just want to know, what was the business that Bill Gates wanted to buy from you? Tell us more about that business and what the value proposition was to have someone like Bill Gates invest so heavily, in fact, purchase it from you.
Yes. So this is one of those things where we had, as a company, been in business for 13 years, and we had a extensive background in photography. So I came and started with photography production, then photography representation, and pardon me, and then with September 11th, that wiped out my production business in a single day, and my photography business was, in so many words, stolen from me by a bad employee who got too close to my key vendor and then started setting up her own business, which was my business without me. And while these things in itself are, when I was going through this really tragic, but if we look at this from a spiritual perspective or from a destiny or serendipity perspective, it forced me to look into what else I could do with photography. And it was stock photography syndication. And a stock photography syndication is when you take existing images that other people have photographed. And that was at a time when we first started digitizing. So this was a very early technology company when we were digitizing these images and then making it available in a worldwide syndication network. So we were licensing our images of interiors and exterior of homes all over the world into 79 countries. But the side effect of what happened is I had learned one very important lesson, that you need to go after the A-listers first, because if you go after the A-listers, B and C will come automatically. If you start with B or C, you always have to convince A, but if you have A, everybody automatically comes with it. So we approached the best photographers in the world, and I had a value proposition where I would fly to New York or wherever they were. I would walk into their studio. I take the physical boxes of where these chromes at the time, the negatives and chromes were, and I would literally take them, fly them back to Los Angeles, and then organize them, name them, code them, ship them to back then India in a box and a hard drive to have them digitized. And then they came back, put them in a database that we wrote, and make them available globally. Now, that in itself was what, everybody was doing at the time. And it was really a race to digitize as quickly as possible. But our value proposition was number one, we were one out of two global companies that were specialized in architecture and interior. But because we had the best photographers in the world, we also got the best home stories. So when a particular celebrity or an A-lister like a Julianne Moore is buying a house or condo in New York, she's going to hire an architect, she's going to hire an interior designer to build it the exact way they want it. And then inevitably, because Julianne Moore is close friends with whatever the big magazine editors, the photographer will say, well, I'm shooting Julianne Moore's condo in New York. And then Elle Decor says, well, we are interested in photographing this for our magazine. And so that one of the photographers photographed it, was on a contract for Elle Decor to shoot Julianne Moore's house. And then eventually it comes out of embargo. And every time these stories of Francis Ford Coppola, as I said, Julianne Moore, Seal, Cindy Crawford, whatever those big names were at the time would come out of embargo, we had the rights to license these images all over the world. And when you have when you have Madonna's home in Los Angeles, that's not very difficult to sell. Everybody wants that. So I would, put it on the ticker at night. I come in the morning, I'd sold it 30 times. And that's what attracted the company that Bill Gates owned, because they had bought a very expensive celebrity brand and they couldn't grow it. So we were literally the only player available, the only option for them to grow this particular brand. And that's why they bought us.
Incredible story, very creative to say the least. What advice would you give to the everyday individual or business owner, entrepreneur, about how to go about creating their unapologetic value proposition? You've given us a wonderful real life example, but if you had to encourage somebody else to do this from scratch, what would you say to them?
Yeah, I like that you asked the question this particular way, because it is exactly that. It is that a lot of times we believe that what we know innately how to do well has no value because it's so easy for us, but that we have to master in these painstaking, excruciating ways something that we're naturally not good at, and then somehow that's the value. And that is not the case. The stuff that you think has the least value is typically the most valuable piece about you. So if I were to say, so I have an accent, I am from Germany. Everybody already automatically assumes that people from Germany are very strategic. They're no BS. They say it like it is. Why would I want to correct them in an assumption? Why not make that part of my brand? And so when we deliberately choose the growth architect, because that's a language that's around building, construction, growing, blueprints, we built that very deliberately because it ties into something people already assume about me, which happens to be true because I do really like systems and processes and strategies and all that kind of good stuff. But you want to be really unapologetic about something that you are, because the controversy when somebody says, well, you are so this, but you're not so that, gives you an indication that it's clearly identifiable what you are. So then you know what to go after that attracts people to this particular piece. Whereas if you do too much, there's no identification with what you are and your method, because it's too wishy-washy, because it's trying to be too inclusive. So the unapologetic value proposition, and the term unapologetic value proposition, comes from this notion to say what you don't like about yourself mostly is the thing that you need to put front and center, because that's the recognizable piece that others are going to be attracted to.
Wow, those are some very revelatory insights. I love everything you're saying. It's almost as if aligned with what assumptions or stereotypes on a macro level, it appears, align with that if that's already the branding that is associated with you by default because of, per se, heritage, nationality, whatever the case may be. Sounds like you're saying align with that. But what happens if someone is like, well, I am not that, it's not authentic to my brand? How do we what do you say to them then? In the same breath, use what's working in your favor, because as you're saying, you're German. People assume that it happens to be who you are, but what if it's not somebody else? How do you then help them get to that unapologetic value proposition?
Yeah, I like this question a lot, especially around the stereotypes. So I think this is really a personal decision. Now, if the stereotype is negative, or if the stereotype is something that you're then up against, then I would not use that. Or I would reframe it in a particular type of way. So I think that some of the things, I had a client and she was from Brazil, and we put in the the feeling that Brazilians are assumed to have, and so did she, for color and for enjoyment and for inclusion and for everybody having a really good time. So we put that in her brand, to say, we give this a particular spin, because this is our fairy dust at the end of when we are branding with a company, to make sure, does it have this little bit of a sparkle that the Brazilians can bring, because it's innately in our culture to make sure that it shines and sparkles, which is a beautiful little branding idea. Now, if you're in a culture where, there might be not as many positive things that we can spin, I'd be probably a little bit more careful about that. But you want to be clear on what's a perception other people already have of you, and then is that a positive perception or is it a negative perception? If it's a positive perception, then play with that to a degree. I'm not saying become someone you're not, because that never works. But to say, can I lean into that? Or you can say, well, that's why we came to the United States, or why we came to another country, because we did not want to be looked as, these strategically cold Germans. We wanted to infuse a lot more empathy. So in so many words, I brought the strategy from Germany, but I atypically added the empathy and the spirituality to it, so that we could now redefine the evolution of something that is maybe perceived as cold. So you see how we just slightly adjusted that for people to say, oh, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, Germans can be very cold. Well, that's exactly why we did that. And then, you have a brand that fits you a little bit more. But I, it's a process that I use. There's 4 steps to it. And it really is about what makes you uniquely you. What can you add to that? And what do the numbers say? And how do you want to be perceived?
How do you find out what people think of you? Basically, that's the question, so that you can see what's working, see if it's positive or negative. I'm just curious as to how an individual would try and get that feedback, right?
That's a lot of self-awareness. I was just speaking on a panel on Friday for Women in Technology Hollywood, where I'm on the board of directors, and that's really one of the things that I always talk about. I said it has nothing to do with what you think on how you're being perceived, but the only thing that matters is how others actually perceive you. And the only way you find out how others perceive you is you need to ask. And you need to see on when you do something, or you perform a task, or when you're in sales, or when you're in marketing, what's coming back to you. If hostility comes back, your language is too controversial. If you, especially right now, we are in a very, very controversy driven environment right now. So, your job now is to take as much friction out of all your messaging as you possibly can, unless you want to be run over by a bus, because there's a very angry mob out there. And it doesn't matter where they're coming from or who they identify with, but we are looking at a perception of a rise in patriarchy and masculine power. And so if your message is either too masculine or too against masculinity, right now you're going to have a really hard time doing that. We also see backlash against minorities. We will see an environment where there's an assumption that everybody is the same, which we know they're not. We know that, my granddaughter, who's 15 months old, needs different protections than I do, for many reasons. So we know these assumptions are not correct, but they are the assumptions nevertheless. So instead of fighting it and coming out with a message, your challenge now is to really, I call it in the women's code, lead, don't beg. How do you take on leadership right now and say, what's the perception that I want to have of myself? So I stepped out and I said, I know that there are people that are going to be very angry. I know there are the people that are feeling like they just got wind under their wings, and they're going to do a lot of really stupid stuff, and they're going to say a lot of stupid stuff because I've been around long enough to see it multiple times happening. The only positioning that I recommend right now is the positioning of non-resistance and of a very fine-tuned messaging that appears on the outside to be all inclusive. Now, you can think whatever you want, but the perception of that is like, if I say that's my perception, then what do I need to do now for this perception that I've designed on a piece of paper is going to come back to me? So if I say there's a rise in patriarchy and masculinity, that's a controversial message. That means that men that are listening to your podcast are maybe now going to say, what a bunch of BS. Here we go again, poorly aging feminist. She's probably having a bunch of cats. Like the whole 9 yards. But if I say that when we look at leadership now, how do we create now an all-inclusive message that we are regaining balance from something that has been perceived as having been out of balance, which is why we see the shift to the other side right now. What needs to be done to be bringing this back into balance? Now, suddenly everybody can buy into this particular message, even though, in my opinion, it may be the same message. So that's, I think, what's happening right now. And how you're going to test that is you're going to put some content out. You're going to see what comments are coming back. You're going to have some of these conversations. You see what's coming back. And you keep testing this until you get the results that you want. And then that becomes your language.
Thank you. I learned a whole lot from that response, and I bet everyone listening will as well. It's very challenging times. It's challenging, and not, to your point, not so much that I believe we should change who we are and now just acquiesce to the changing times and becoming authentic in that transition to kind of not shake things up too much. But there is a lot to be said about being aware and reading the room and doing the necessary things to still find your space and get ahead within that space. So thank you, super valuable response. Now, you work with two distinct groups of visionary entrepreneurs. In my opinion, I think it's those with big ideas who want to make a significant impact, and then those successful leaders who perhaps are just seeking a deeper purpose. Have you seen any unique challenges and opportunities in working with each of these different groups that you can speak of?
Yeah, I definitely find that there's been a massive shift in the last couple of years, which is almost like in paradox or in a complete different angle to what we see on the outside. I find that the desire to find meaning and purpose, especially for entrepreneurs, business owners, is off the charts. That the question, who am I without this business? Who am I without this job? Who am I without this work? Is money really everything? How good is it if I blow up my life in the process to getting somewhere where I don't even know if that's going to give me happiness? And I work with a lot of high net worth individuals. Let me tell you, they just figured out how to get the money out of the way. They still have all these other questions. And then society telling you that you have no more right to have any problems just because you have money, which is really an insult in itself.
Right.
Is to say, well, so you have money, so you're no longer allowed to have any problems, relationship issues, problems with your kids because you can just throw money at it and then somehow that solves everything. That is absolutely incorrect. So I find that the more I've been leaning into the strategy and the spirituality combined, the more I find people that have these exact conversations that believe that when they're leaning into their surrender, into their purpose, that then they will be more successful and will have more prosperity, and not just in work, but everywhere. And that is a shift that, maybe millennials started with that, but Gen Z much, 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 much more so. There is no delaying my life for work. In a way that's really good, in my opinion, because my generation certainly did not know that, and that's not what we were taught. We were brought up by, in my case, by two parents who grew up in World War II, and we were taught it was all about work, all about getting the work done, all about, this, and then the taking care of yourself wasn't even in the equation. Taking care of everybody else was very important. And so people work themselves literally to death. So what's changing right now is that these conversations, and especially, for all of your listeners that are in the consulting or in the coaching space, you cannot just focus on one thing. You have to focus on how these things connect and what the intersections of these points are, because people really are looking for a deeper purpose, and people with deep purpose and deep meaning tend to be happier, more successful, have better relationships. Their kids talk to them. And I'll give you one example when this really dawned on me. So my granddaughter is 15 months old. So when I say I have a granddaughter, obviously that ages me. I just turned 60. And I had to come to a specific question to say, well, what's it for me now? I had an exit, I made the money. I certainly don't need to work, but I want to work. So what is it about this that I feel that I need to give? And so we were sitting there, and my daughter came over with her husband and the baby, and my husband's daughter came with her husband, and friends came over, and we were laughing, and I made a rosemary lamb, and it smelled great. We had some wine, people had a great time.
Oh, sounds
And then
amazing.
I know, and then the baby falls asleep, and my daughter says, "Do you want to bring her downstairs to sleep?" I said, "No, I want to hold her." And so
Right.
I'm holding her in my arm, and I'm watching this perfect little face, and with the lip shivers like only little babies when they're dreaming. You're like, what are they dreaming about? And and then it dawned on me, Carmel, it's like, I'm here. This is there. This is where everybody wants to go to. I have the baby in my arms. My daughter speaks to me. His daughter speaks to him. We have a great love story. We're in a beautiful home. We have cars in the drive. We have money in the bank. We can afford the food. This was so clear to me that my goal, my passion, my vision was I need to tell as many people as possible how to get here without blowing up their lives, because this is what it's about. It's these moments, and collecting these little moments of when you have a moment where you look at your child, you look at your partner, and I saw that you just been proposed to, these types of those are moments. You're collecting all these moments. That's what it's about, not the chase, but collecting as many moments as you can.
Staying present 100%. And I think taking that stock, like you said, that was one of those moments for you where you looked at the baby, it's a coming home moment almost. And I think the more we can spend time appreciating and recognizing those moments, the happier you feel, right? And everything else falls away. You made such a good point. One in particular is how people view people with money, that you just don't have any other problems. And I think those who do view the situation in that way says a lot about how much they value money and how
Yeah.
incorrectly, where
Uh-huh.
they place that, because it's those same people who say, if I just had more money, I would do this. If I just had more money, I'd be happy. If I had more money, I'd have a relationship. So they making the money the god, or whatever we want to call it, something that unattainable, firstly, which keeps it more away from you. But then also something that once you do have it, probably turns them into those. those people who behave just like that, get their perception of it. Um, so I'm going to out to a bit more of the business focus and what you do and how you help different kinds of businesses achieve various things. So I read up and I know that you offer blueprints for three phases of business: it's build, grow, and scale. And I think a lot of businesses are obviously in one of those buckets, if not transitioning between two. Walk us through how your signature growth system will help clients reverse engineer the strategies to get from where they are to where they want to go.
Yeah, and you picked my favorite. So as you said, there are three pieces in how you grow your business. The first part is building. That's where you figure out what the unapologetic value proposition is, what you're doing, why you're doing it, why you are the right person to do it, who you're doing it for, and what the offer is. Once you go into that second part, you go into growing. And in growing, that's when you're optimizing, some of these systems. You figure out your lead generation, your marketing, your funnels. How do you get your service to more people, and how do you build this business? And one of the fastest way we have found for our clients is with the signature growth system. And the signature growth system goes like this. So the more you know in business, the more you uh, can do different things for your clients, because you have so much experience in a large transformation journey that goes from here to here. So in the signature growth system, we kind of put the bookmarks on both ends and say, well, what is the transformation journey that you actually want to do? Not what can you do, but what is it? What's the one that you want to do? So people know what the journey actually is that you provide. And then we look at this and we say, based upon your knowledge, how do we cut these pieces now into the different phases or different steps of what you do? So in our case, under growth architecture, it's three: build, grow, scale, because it requires different methods and different processes and systems and different mindset, skill set, action set developments. And in the signature growth system, we then say, we develop the diagnosis tool, like how do you take your clients through to figure out where in the transformation journey they are. So it's not a strategy call, it's not a free coaching call, it's not a consulting call. It's something that's very specific to what you are solving. So they come to you, and then you can promise them in 15, 30, 45 minutes, if you're good at what you do, you can probably pinpoint where on the transformation journey they are when they come to you. It takes me literally less than 30 minutes to figure this out now. And once I know where they need to go, I can say, well, you got these pieces and you are here right now. So based upon what you're telling me, this is the piece that we need to solve for. Now your client has this amazing experience with you. They say you're the first person who's not just trying to sell me something, but who actually understands where I'm at with my business. And now we need to look at this particular transformation journey and the steps that we've identified. What do we offer in those steps, and at what price point? And where is that journey at the beginning and the end? And what's the transformation promise for this particular part of the journey? And that's how we build these signature growth systems, which then help the coach or the consultant very clearly to identify their clients, what they need, sell more often, sell for longer. And then when a client completes one thing, you don't go and say, oh, well, bummer, you're finished. You say, congratulations, you're just moving into the next phase. And now you already pre-sold the next phase or the next step or whatever that is. So that's where the signature growth system is is such a money maker, really, for businesses, when you understand that and you adjust all your processes and systems around that, because there's always a next logical conclusion on where they need to go after they've gotten this one skill set.
Amazing. Now, you mentioned earlier the importance of aligning spirituality with strategic success, and how you came to do this in your brand building, your value proposition, to bring the essence of German heritage to the softness of spirituality, or merging those fields or energies, however you want to say it. Now, Can you share some insights on how visionary leaders can do this effectively in their businesses? Obviously, I'm asking if you can share with us the insights on how they can align spirituality with strategic success.
Yeah, I think that the most important thing is you have to imagine that the way the world works is already pretty miraculously perfect. So if a large oak tree knows how to move their roots aside to make room for a seedling, if all the trees in the world know what to do when spring comes and what to do when summer is here and what to do when winter is here, this intelligence exists. So if you were to tap into that intelligence that already is all around us, energy, right? That connects everything. How the sun, creates the synthesis with nature, and the insects are being eaten by the birds that are being eaten by a larger bird. I mean, everything is so perfectly aligned. So if you come from the perception that instead of you didn't create any of that, we didn't, something created this that is so in balance, we are a part of it, we are not ruling it, we are a part of it. So if I let go of the push, 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 and the wanting more and the getting somewhere, and I would just use the spiritual principles that we have seen in these vibrational laws and the energetic laws really work to say, it is mine to have. I truly believe it is mine to have. I'm going to go into this energetic vibration of attracting the right client, not persuading them, but attracting the right client based upon my unapologetic value proposition, that the people will find me that naturally resonate with what I talk about and how I show up in the world, the perception we just talked about, that then I would have more clients than I probably need. Why am I chasing 1,000 clients if I need 20 right now? Why not tone it down and go for the 20 that are in this resonance? And so this letting go of the illusion that you're somewhere stuck in a matrix where you have to sacrifice yourself to make the money so that you have a good life, which doesn't even make sense. How about you surrender and step into this energy so that you can enjoy what you have? You can enjoy who you are. You can enjoy with the people that you love. You can attract people that naturally that want that. And then we have a much better and more sophisticated and much frictionless environment. And just turn on the TV and tell me how much friction we have created and how much this does not work, which is why I believe our work, Carmel, is so important right now. We need to lead.
Yeah.
We need to lead. People are called to lead and to show what it looks like when we let go of the friction. We focus on the person and we attract people to us that are on the same vibration. We can do anything. But this out there is just, it's just such a turn off for me.
Oh, 100%. And it's chaotic and nothing good can come from that.
No.
It just makes things so much harder. So everything you're saying is 100% aligning with me. And you're just refreshing, the intelligence I think that's innately within us all.
Yes.
But we have to remain open, right, to hear these conversations, to absorb. I think we all come to each other's spaces to guide, to lead, to teach, and to remind. And so there's a lot of work to be done, I think, as we're speaking, in terms of mindset shifts and inner work that not a lot of people even are aware of to start. But for those who are open in terms of clients, let's bring it back to business. What do they need to do in terms of mindset shifts? What's the major trends you're seeing for clients to fully capitalize on market opportunities, and obviously expand their impact?
The first thing, what I told, I was facilitating a group last week, and I told them the first thing I want you to do is I want you to really go and look at where people are mentally right now. So they're
Yeah.
either ecstatic because their guy won, or they are absolutely devastated here in the United States because, their person lost. And what's happening is a whole bunch of finger pointing and blaming and what could have done. The reality of it, the majority has spoken. So now, if you're in business, you need to look at what did the majority say. because that's your pulse. That's where we are right now. And whether you agree with it or not agree with it, that's just a fact. That's what just happened. So if I look at that, then I need to say, so how does this affect the people that I am serving, my clients? So my clients are coaches and consultants and small businesses and people that are looking for purpose. So I can already tell you most of them are not in a really good place right now because they can't understand what happened. So how do I need to show up then as a result of it? And that's the playbook. And I need to show up as decisive. I need to show up as strong. I need to show up as a leader. I need to show up as somebody who can balance and bring this together and make people feel not helpless or overly, punitive, but to say, whatever side you are on, what do we need to do now to either share that your vote for this was the right vote, or if your vote wasn't for that, that you're not being completely crushed like a little cockroach, right? So what do I need to do on my end to be that so that my clients say, thank God I called you, because now I feel like I can take a breath. I feel this is a safe environment. We can talk about the realities of it without the politics of it. And that's, I think, how we need to show up. That's what everybody can do right now. And then you need to go on your website, remove all your friction language, take your blog posts down that have harsh language, remove from your Facebook all your political comments, because that's only going to get you in hot water right now. Because what we're going to be seeing for the next couple of months is a pendulum swinging all the way to one side. So get yourself out of the line of fire and work on the non-friction message that needs to be in front of people, where everybody can say, Carmel, that was amazing what you said. I can buy in it one way or another, because that's how we help the world, by serving people that are right for us, not by their political candidate. And that's the other thing I want to say is that, look at what it says on tombstones of people. It never says, was an avid Republican or was a convicted Democrat. I mean, you if you were on a cemetery and you see that, you go like, guy's an idiot. What it says, brother, mother, father, beloved. And that's what you need to focus on, is what your contribution is in your environment and what you can touch. And then you focus on that and you do that, because these guys out there, they don't care about you at all. You need to care about yourself and your community.
100%. And accept what is, to your point, and see what the next best steps forward. Now, that sounds like it's strategy focused. And then there's roadblocks that many of us might encounter. What have you seen in terms of entrepreneurs, and how do you help them overcome that? As we round off the conversation, that'll be a great place to take us into the closing thought.
Yeah, it's the thing that you're up against right now that needs to be solved first. So if you're not finding clients, your lead generation needs to be fixed. If you're not making sales, you need to look at your sales process. If you're not selling products or services, you need to look at the offer. So typically the thing that you keep running away from is the thing that needs to be solved. And when you solve that, everything else is going to fall into place. On whether that's your own belief system in yourself and your business, whether that's money, mindset, overcoming whatever has been in the past, the thing that sits there and has been sitting there and is not moving needs to be solved first.
Wonderful. Now, you're also a podcast host. Let's touch on that, what your podcast covers, and anything else you want to add as a closing remark for our listeners.
Yes, thank you so much for that. So first things first, for all your listeners, this is a labor of love. Go wherever you pick up this podcast and subscribe to the show right now and give Carmel some love with a 5-star review, even if it's just a very short little sentence or a heart that you listen to the show, because algorithms are everything. And, as she's doing all of this for you, please give her a little bit of your time and love back. And as far as I'm concerned, my podcast is a business growth architect show where we talk about spirituality and strategy and how the two go together and what you can do to combine both of those to live a successful and balanced life, really. And if you heard something that you want to talk to me about, go to uncoverysession.com, schedule a 15-minute conversation with me. Be happy to figure out what's going on in your business and put my head into it, and if I can help you. And if you want to check out what your earning potential is, I have created a very cool little quiz called What's Your Talent Worth? And you find it at whatsyourtalentworth.com. It literally takes like 2 minutes, and then it will calculate a number based on your input and will tell you what your earning potential with your skill is in today's market.
Beate Chelette, thank you so much. What a wonderfully revealing, insightful, inspirational conversation. The future definitely looks bright with leaders and forward thinkers like yourself who will go, step by step, person by person, changing the narrative, leading us to a brighter, spiritually strategic, focused future. So I appreciate your time. You're listening to The Harvest, everybody. Stay tuned for more.
Brought to you, as always, by The Harvest Podcast, available anywhere you listen to podcasts.